Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Zaz, and my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. And what a good day to talk about two potential rookies, mid-round rookies at that, becoming starters for this New York Giants football team. Now, we always expect that some of these guys, youngsters, would have to take on bigger roles going into the 2022 season. We have a lot of weaknesses, but now maybe they can turn into strengths with some of these impact players. The mid-rounds, interesting for the Giants, definitely had a lot of draft capital. I think they had, 11 draft picks, so they got a lot of players, a lot of them scheme-specific, guys like Micah McFadden. And there are some guys who could end up making a legitimate impact for this team. Notably Daniel Bellinger, Dane Belton out of Iowa, Josh Azudu, and Cordell Flott. So a couple of guys here that really could make an impact moving forward. But we want to discuss two in specific today, Belton and Bellinger. And how they could end up becoming starters day one for this New York Giants team and hopefully developing into some pretty solid players. And we're really excited to break those guys down and take a look at what their strengths and weaknesses are, Anthony. But before we do, how you doing tonight, my friend?
Doing great. And when the Giants entered the 2022 NFL draft, one of their goals obviously was to get two day one starters out of the first round. And they accomplished that. Right away, they got Kayvon Thibodeau and they got Evan Neal. Those are day one starters. You can lock those in. Starting edge rusher, starting right tackle, no question about it. But in the middle rounds, it was really important for the Giants not only to find depth on their roster, but also because of how thin their roster is, to find some players that might be able to make an impact from day one. And they found a lot of guys that can make an impact. Joshua Zito, as Alex just mentioned, he's competing for a starting job. He doesn't look locked in, but he has a chance to start. You got Micah McFadden, who seems like a player that can definitely rotate in as a pass rushing linebacker and definitely make an impact on day one. Cordell Flott as well, similarly, could rotate in at that slot cornerback position. That's added depth, and same with Wan'Dale Robinson. But there's two rookies who have already started to make an impact in camp. There's only been 10 OTA practices, but already these guys are looking like they could be day one starters, and that is Dane Belton and Daniel Bellinger. Now, for Daniel Bellinger, it seems to be the case of there's no competition at tight end. I mean, there's a couple veteran guys that the Giants signed that don't have any familiarity really with the offense or the organization. They're just new veterans that were picked up off the streets, and they're not very high ceiling players. However, Daniel Bellinger kind of does have a high ceiling when you really take a look at him. And same with Dane Belton. And Dane Belton, I think, has the opportunity to start from day one, not only because he's been impressing at camp and they've been rotating him with the first team quite a bit, but also because he's got the ability to play multiple positions. So if the Giants need a starter day one at free safety or strong safety or slot cornerback or even on the outside, Dane Belton, similarly to Julian Love, has the ability to kind of play any single one of those positions if he needs to. So I think he's got a lot of value there, but these are two rookies that I'm really high on. I thought these were great picks in the middle rounds of the draft. These are both picks that I've seen touted as steals by analysts on PFF, the Draft Network, wherever, NFL.com as well. These two picks, people are really liking these, and so far through 10 days of OTAs, the Giants seem to be really excited in these two players that they have.
Yeah, we've talked about Bellinger the past couple of days. He's kind of come up pretty frequently. So I want to dive into Belton right off the bat, right? Belton is an interesting player, played this cash role, right? So what is the cash role? A slot safety role. He really is a hard-hitting kind of guy, 6'1", and 205 pounds. He's going to be directly competing with Julian Love for the starting spot alongside Xavier McKinney, that other starting safety spot. But it's kind of going to be really focused on who performs better in the box, right? Julian Love is 5'11", 195 pounds, give or take. He's a little bit smaller. I think Belton packs a bigger punch when he hits. But I do think overall, this could be one of the more intriguing position battles that unfolds this spring, or rather summer. And really Belton is interesting, right? 4.43 40-yard dash, 36.5 vertical jump. 4.24 20-yard shuttle. The guy has some great tangible traits. He had 5 interceptions last season for Iowa. Really, really showed out. He can play that nickel safety position really well, which is a coveted role in today's pass-happy NFL, right? So you need a guy that's going to be able to take on that role. He can lay the wood in the running game, but he can also really, really stand out in coverage as well, especially in the zone system, right? He's really well known for his zone coverage and really reading quarterbacks' eyes and jumping in front of passes on the short routes. So that's where I think he's going to make his money, him staying inside the box. But Julian Love is a different style of play, right? Julian Love is not known for his hard-hitting capabilities. He's known as a good coverage safety. He can play in the deep. He has pretty decent speed. But he's really, really good as a coverage guy. He was a cornerback for Notre Dame, one of the highest graded corners coming out of his draft class. Ended up making the transition to safety because he was a little bit undersized. So based on what the Giants are likely going to do on defense with Wake Martindale, and they want to have those blitz happy safeties, those box guys that can really help in the run. Dane Belton seems to be the standout option, right? He seems to be the most, scheme specific player that they could possibly start there, which makes me think that to open the year, they'll probably split snaps between Dane Belton and Julian Love to open the year. I mean, Brian Dable has said a lot of great things about Julian Love, and it seems like they really like him as a leader, as a guy who's consistent. He's there every day. He shows up, and I think that really stands out to me. But Dane Belton's a guy that they drafted specifically for Wink Martindale's defense, Anthony. So when you're looking at these two players, how do you think they split this up? Who do you think ends up getting the first crack of the starting job? I think Love probably will get a little bit more love, pun intended, because of his experience. But at the end of the day, Dane Belton is this better scheme fit. So maybe by week 3, week 4, you could see him getting kind of mixed in a little bit more frequently.
I think Julian Love is going to be a starter at one of those safety positions, but I think the Giants' base defense could end up being something that has more than one safety or more than two safeties on the field. They could end up with that cash safety on the field more frequently than not and have Dane Belton really mixed in playing reps as a starter. Now, just because he's not technically a starter in a base defense doesn't mean he's not playing a starting level of snaps. If Dane Belton's on the field for 80% of the snaps, he's playing like a starter, even if he's not the starter in a base defense, basically, because they're not going to be in their base defense for the majority of the time. Usually NFL teams in this modern day and age are not in their base defense for the majority of the time. A lot of the times you see them in the dime, in the nickel, big nickel, all that stuff. And that is where Dane Belton becomes really valuable because he's got that ability to play that cash, as Alex mentioned, play some free safety, strong safety, slot cornerback, and cash. That has you playing both free safety and outside linebackers. So really versatile player that you're going to see on the field a whole lot as early as his rookie season, in my opinion. And the reason that we're even bringing this up is because he's already seeing the field far more frequently than anyone expected. According to Zach Rosenblatt of NJ.com, he's saying that Belton's receiving first-team reps. And it's understandable, according to Rosenblatt, because of his versatility and the absence of some of the defensive backs. So you got to keep that in mind and factor that in. Aaron Robinson, Darnay Holmes, and safety Jaron Williams weren't participating in practice. But Dane Belton receiving a bulk of first-team reps is still significant because even if these guys come back, Dane Belton could have earned the jobs that they lost through injury. That happens very frequently in the NFL. A rookie or a young player might step in, get a bunch of snaps in practice that they weren't expecting to get, really show up and show out as Dane Belton has been, and then they steal that job and steal that position. So if those guys aren't healthy by training camp, this job is Dane Belton's to steal away, and there's a really good chance that he does because, as you mentioned, Alex, perfect scheme fit for Wink Martindale due to the versatility to play like 5 different positions on this defense. Now, in terms of him versus Julian Love, I think that's an interesting competition. I think, I usually just say the more experienced player is going to win a position battle more often than not. And I think that Julian Love is a really solid player. Alex, I've been a huge fan of him since the Giants drafted him in the 4th round, 2019. I love Julian Love. We interviewed Julian Love, so there's a little bit of a personal bias with Julian Love because I really got to know him and I really like him as a person. And I do want him to win the starting position, but you can't ignore the fact that Dane Belton is a very talented and versatile player, and the two of them have very similar skill sets in the fact that they play multiple positions. So this could be one of the most intriguing battles of training camp this summer, and it's definitely one that I'm keeping a very close eye on.
Yeah, I mean, there's a possibility that they get both of them on the field at the same time. You know what I mean? If you have Julian Love playing in the box and then you have Dane Belton playing in that slot role, he can play kind of slot. He's not the best in man coverage, a lot better in zone. I wouldn't be surprised. You're looking at the man coverage rate that Wink Martindale system runs is probably going to hover around 35 to 40%. So you're talking about another 60% there that's up for grabs, right? It's a lot of hybrid man zone. You could see Dane Belton playing a lot of zone coverage, dropping into those portions of the field where they're going to leave kind of bait. They're going to try and bait quarterbacks to throw there and have Belton undercut those with his speed, right? He's a fast guy, 4.43 40-yard dash at the end of the day. So I would not be surprised to see both of them. I wouldn't be surprised to see Xavier McKinney, Belton, and Julian Love on the field at the same time doing some unique things. But I also think they're going to get Cordell Flott involved in the slot. Maybe competing with Aaron Robinson out wide as well. We're going to see those guys move around. Aaron Robinson obviously was a nickel corner coming into the NFL. He's transitioning to the boundary. So I would not be surprised if they were just flip-flopping them based on the matchups. But I am intrigued to see how they get these guys involved. Dane Belton, I think, will be an impact player day one, and he will help this defense kind of set the tone, especially because he's a hard hitting box safety. But I do like him as a player. I think he's a great scheme fit. Now, moving on to Dane Bellinger, we all know what Dane Bellinger offers. We've talked about him on a number of occasions. He is a guy that we really like. Dane Bellinger, coming from San Diego State, not really utilized heavily in the passing game, 353 total yards, 2 touchdowns, but he didn't drop a pass in 2021, a 4.2% drop rate for his entire career. So when you're talking about Bellinger, he is the polar opposite of Evan Ingram, which I think a lot of people will be very excited about. He is a great run blocker, a good pass blocker, and he's a very capable receiver who does not drop the football. Sounds like the anti-Evan Ingram, honestly. So I'm excited to see what he can put on the field. Given that we have Ricky Seals-Jones and Jordan Akins, I don't believe that they're going to really compete with him to a level that's going to thrust him into a TE3 or TE2 role. I think that he has the opportunity to steal that starting job from day one if he runs with it. It's only been good, positive news from training camp so far. He's a good pass catcher. He's making an impact. He looks pretty ripped. There's a picture from yesterday on my Twitter of him, showing the guns off. He looks like a pretty big guy. So, if he can make an impact in the running game, especially on that right side with Mark Glowinski and Evan Neal, you have Dane Bellinger getting out to the second level and moving bodies. He's going to make an impact, and he's a much better blocker than Akins or Ricky Seals-Jones immediately. So another guy here, he probably will be the biggest impact starter for a Giants rookie this season, aside from the Evan Neal and Kayvon Thibodeau. He's a guy that I really have my eye on, and I think could be a great player, given the coaching staff can really develop him properly with Andy Bischoff coming from that coaching school of having developed Mark Andrews, one of the best TEs in football, has experience with Jordan Akins as well. So we're talking about great coaching staff around Dane Bellinger, and now all he has to do is tap into that and really extrapolate on his strengths now. So how do you view Bellinger and what his impact can be moving forward?
I think personally, Bellinger will be the day one starter at tight end. And I think that's tremendous for the Giants to have found somebody in the 4th round of the 2022 NFL draft that could start at a position right away, a tight end especially. I think this is a great pick. I really liked it when they made it. If you really do some research and reading and even watch a little bit of film on Dane Bellinger, you see that he has a great skill set, a lot of tools that can be worked with. He wasn't really utilized too well in college at San Diego State. They kind of just had him block a lot, and they didn't really send him downfield at all. But if you take a look at the tools and traits that he has, peak athleticism, very elite athleticism, especially for a mid-round prospect. I think his relative athletic score was like a 9.6 or something. He's very fast, has a great 10-yard split, so he can accelerate on a dime. I really like what he brings to the table as that underneath receiving tight end. Yes, he's a great blocker, a very willing blocker, and I think that's going to make a huge impact for the Giants offense, having a solid blocking tight end. But you take a look at what he does on those screen passes. I brought this talking point up many times on this podcast. Mike Kafka is coming from Kansas City, where with the Chiefs, Travis Kelsey is one of the best tight ends in the NFL, arguably the best. And the way that they use him and make him so successful, you'll see in the red zone, they'll throw a shovel pass to Travis Kelsey and let him just turn upfield and go score a touchdown. Dane Bellinger can do those sorts of things. He caught a lot of screen passes and passes behind the line of scrimmage during his collegiate career at San Diego State. And we've seen that with Travis Kelsey and his usage, a lot of screen passes and passes behind the line of scrimmage. Now, Travis Kelsey, again, elite talent. He does everything. He blocks, he goes downfield, he's underneath, he's behind the line of scrimmage, he's everywhere. Dane Bellinger is probably not going to have that well-rounded of a skill set in year one, but there are similar usages to how San Diego was utilizing Dane Bellinger and how Kansas City was utilizing Travis Kelsey. And so I think that's where, when the draft room gets into play and there's a collaborative decision being made on who to draft, Mike Kafka probably said, hey, this guy right here, I love his skill set. I know exactly how to utilize it. That's who I want, Joe Schoen. And Joe Schoen probably went out there and got it done. That's just something I'll theorize out there because I just really see that kind of connection. And as Alex mentioned, we've got a great tight ends coach now in Andy Bischoff. I think that Dane Bellinger is a player that has the opportunity to develop into more than just a quality starter. He could be a very good player for the Giants. Again, really love the tools and traits that he has. He's got the ability to go up there and make a catch in traffic. We've seen a couple red zone touchdowns. But again, you take a look at some of these players that come out of college and are mid-round picks. They're mid-round picks because they weren't productive and they didn't really get all the opportunities, so you didn't get a full glimpse at them. One name that comes to mind, and I saw a stat line comparison between this player and Dane Bellinger, and they were very similar, was George Kittle. They had very similar usages in college and very similar stat lines, and they weren't used very much. But they had all those tools and traits and a well-rounded skill set. And of course, George Kittle best tight end in the NFL, arguably, got to the league, got utilized a whole lot more by the San Francisco 49ers, of course, one of the best coaching staffs in the NFL. So that helps. But it's very frequent that you see that with tight ends because in the collegiate game, the tight end position is not nearly as important because it's a lot of spread offenses out there in college. You got a lot of heavy emphasis on the wide receivers, on the running backs, and especially on the quarterback. So the tight end position somewhat gets forgotten about, and a lot of them don't really develop in college, and they got to wait till they get to the pros to get that opportunity to develop it. And I think Dane Bellinger is exactly one of those players that's going to get to the pros, get a whole lot of opportunities, way more than he got in college, and he's going to develop really nicely with a solid coaching staff that includes Andy Bischoff. And I do think that Dane Bellinger is the day one starter for the Giants at tight end, and I think that he's a quality starter at that.
I mean, he's coming from a pro-style offense with San Diego State, so I do like how his transition kind of is going to happen with the Giants. They're going to apply a lot of concepts that he might already be familiar with, and I think that's going to be a huge, huge thing for him. And I also think that the Giants have set themselves up to be a good running football team. You know, like, I mean, they have Saquon. Their offensive line, if not, you know, they do have some good pass blockers, but mostly they're all great run blockers. Evan Neal's a dominant run blocker. Mark Lewinsky, dominant run blocker. John Feliciano, more of a run blocker than a pass blocker. And that right side, you stick Dane Bellinger on there, you know, tell him use that run blocking prowess that you've already have coming from college. Then we'll build on your route running. He does need a little bit more elusivity with his route running. He is a little bit sturdy, but he's got great straight line speed. I think he has a 4.46, I believe, something like that with his 40-yard dash. The guy is fast as hell. So I think that when it comes to his route running, just needs a little bit more development, a little bit more time, experience, and growth. But right off the bat, he's going to make an impact in the run game. And I think that's what makes him TE1 on day one. But these are two guys who we really believe could make an impact for the Giants. Really excited about their development and growth. Obviously, scheme fits. We'll see how coaching kind of gets them and molds them into productive players for this team moving forward, guys. But hope you enjoyed this video. Let us know what you guys think about Dane Belton and Dane Bellinger below in the YouTube comments. As always, make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Giants episode.